Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency. Check us out. I even put on my Delta CX hoodie today. And no, these aren't for sale. Maybe they should be. And welcome to the micro lesson on UX project scoping, planning, and managing. And I've put this together because I've noticed that there are a lot more people freelancing and contracting right now, though this is also for you in-house employees as well. And I thought that I would just show you some of my techniques for how I scope and plan projects. Now, please keep in mind that I have 26 years of experience in scoping and planning projects. So some of these things just come with experience. And that's why I usually trot this out. And I say, it takes years to be good at UX strategy, not just from the perspective of determining an overarching strategy for research or design or both, but really from the perspective of knowing what tasks to do and, all that stuff. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And how much time might it take? So I'm going to show you how I approach this, but again, it might be different for other people. They might use different styles, but if anything I say here today is helpful to you, then I'm glad I put on a show. We also got some input from the Slack channel on some fake projects I could show you how I would plan. So we'll talk about that as well. First, a little bit of housekeeping. Please do subscribe here on YouTube. I love seeing subscribers. We have a few videos that now have ads, but I've decided that the ad money will go to charity. So if running ads helps me in the algorithm, hooray, but I'm not looking to keep your money. So I will be giving that money to a different charity each month. And I'll keep you posted. I think so far I've made $4 on ads this month. Woohoo! But I have promised to give at least 50 American dollars per month to charity to offset some of the money made on the YouTube channel so that I am not in this for the money. Hello, Wilson. Good to see you. Thank you for the emoji. Pow. So let's get some of my screens ready, and I'm going to talk through some common mistakes I see made in scoping and some things to consider. So let's see if I can push some of the right buttons today. I moved all my buttons around, and let's try that one. Let's see. All right, great. So you've got my browser, you've got the chat room. Hi, Krishna. You've got me. You've got the optional tip jar, deltacx.link/tip. Always appreciated, never required. So here is a sample project plan, and let's see if you can guess what could be wrong with it. Because I think if you can think about what's wrong with some project plans, it will help you start to think about how you want to make your own project scope or plan. So in this one, they imagine that it'll take 2 weeks to come up with the research plan and do all of the recruiting and scheduling. In then 3 weeks, they're going to meet 100 participants. And then in weeks 6 and 7, they're going to meet 60 more participants. Now, some of you might think, oh my God, that's just too many participants. It's really not. Depending upon what you're researching and why, that might be the correct number of participants. Hi, Ikening. Thank you. And don't forget, it really helps us with the YouTube algorithm as well if you like and comment after the stream is over. So evidently comments during the stream don't count. So you might think, whoa, Deb, this is just too many people. And I say, no, it's not. Depending upon what you're doing and why you're doing this, especially in generative research, having this many people can be really important. Oh, thank you, Hickening. You're everywhere. The thing is, and Wilson's going in the right direction here, it can take more than 2 weeks. So if we take a look at 2 weeks here, the research plan and the recruitment and the scheduling, that is a lot of work. And we'll talk a little bit later today on how much work that could be. But something like this, now again, the 2 lines here make me think that they think 2 different people are working on this. So maybe one person's writing the plan and one person's recruiting. Tell me what other problem you see here. Anybody see another problem here in week 1 and week 2? And maybe they think one person is interviewing 50 participants over 3 weeks and someone else is doing 50 participants over 3 weeks. And, that's 15 or so a week, which, that could be, that's because that's 15 business days. Yeah, that's possible. That's not too crazy. Though I wouldn't expect someone to also analyze in that time, but I would just expect the interviews to be conducted. Hi, Ray. So if you haven't figured out what's also a little bit funky about week 1 and week 2 is if we think about our research tasks in order, and I don't have a graphic for that yet, but I usually think of research tasks as starting with the plan. The plan is going to guide us on how we recruit. Do we need a screener survey? What does it say? Who are we trying to meet? Where are we going to find them? When we get them, what are we going to ask them or make them do or whatever? It's a little strange to me that the plan is happening while the recruiting and scheduling is happening, because sometimes plans evolve and bugs. And especially once you start collaborating, especially with stakeholders, sometimes you write a fantastic plan, you run it by a stakeholder, and they go, no, I think we need to learn a couple of other things or something different or blah, blah, blah. And you're going, oh, crap, I need to change the plan. Or you're writing, I've had this happen to me even this year. We're writing the plan. We're like, okay, let's meet 30 of this type of person. And we tell the client, we're going to recruit 30 of this type, for 30 of this type of person. And then we decide there's a whole other group we want to meet. Oops, now we have to go back to the client and be like, oh, oops, another group we want to meet. Well, if we'd already started recruiting or something like that, we'd be off. So I think the plan is really a separate animal and should be decided and finalized before you move to recruiting, screening, scheduling, things like that. Now, again, if you have some magical way of doing that, you can, but I think that this is going to make the project difficult, and I would see it as project risk. So that is one here that I think is the kind of thing I see commonly that I think is potential trouble. Hello, new person in LinkedIn. Here's another one. So tell me, as you see things, just jump out in the chat room and tell me, what do you see here that is a potential problem or potential flaw in this planning? So let's imagine that week 1 and 2, we're going to do 10 stakeholder interviews. We're going to assess the internal business processes. We'll pick a handful of them and audit and assess these processes. And then we'll do our research prep, which might be the planning, and the protocol would be your discussion guide, arranging for the contextual inquiry of the staff, which sounds like the stakeholder interviews. So that's 2 weeks for that. Then we've got 2 weeks to meet 60 people. So again, with two streams of work here, obviously one is very about customers and one is about internal employees. So we've got 2 separate streams. I hope this is being done by at least 2 separate people, because you could do 30 interviews in 2 weeks. But again, I wouldn't expect you to analyze that as well. I would only expect you to get those interviews done, especially if these are 1-hour interviews. I mean, this would be hours and hours a day, every day. Hi, Denise. Wilson says stakeholder interviews. There isn't planning for this, or is that included? Good. That's one of it, Wilson. You got it. That is one of the things that I'm going to talk about. So it looks like we kick off the project, week 1 or maybe week 2, stakeholder interviews. Well, hold on. Where was the preparation? The preparation looks like it might be here, but the way that this flight plan or project plan is drawn or constructed, it just looks like these things overlap. And you could mess up your own timing. You could make your clients or stakeholders confused because of when they think these things are happening. Jen Blatz is on LinkedIn and says you should flesh out a lot of the details in the research plan that might change the direction and scope of the project. So true. This plan imagines week 5 and 6, you're going to make ecosystem models. So this is really all of your artifacts, user group insights. So that sounds like some of your analysis, personas, empathy maps, and pain points. Wow, I don't think 2 weeks is enough for this, especially if you are the type of person who likes to do analysis and synthesis by rewatching videos. So I know, and we haven't really talked about this much on the channel, but I know that there's two approaches to analysis and synthesis. Sometimes you are watching back every video and you're spending 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours for every hour of video watching, rewatching, rolling back, pausing, writing down some quotes, making notes. And sometimes you don't have as much time, or it's not required for some reason, and you're just running with the notes you and maybe others took during the session. That certainly can cut down on analysis time. But when I look at a project like this, that seems to be a really important CX UX strategy project, because here's strategic alignment workshops. I do not want to skimp on that analysis. I don't want to just run with the notes and some of the things in my head. I definitely want to take time for analysis, and I want to get a team of my assistant researchers to rewatch those videos, make their notes, do their coding and tagging, and make sure we really heard all the things. Wilson says, oh my God, it takes so much energy and focus to rewatch videos and synthesize. So true. So I think this 2 weeks is way too short. I probably would think these 2 weeks are too short even for the things listed here, but where's the analysis? And then tell me if you see what's wrong with week 8, 9, and 10. 2B journey design. So again, this is the customer journey map. So this assumes that somewhere in here we have an as-is customer journey map. And now after some workshops, we're going to be doing the 2B customer journey map. We're also going to be doing 2 rounds of design, probably some early concepts and probably some early concept testing, and 2 rounds of that. What I noticed was wrong with that, and I don't see your comments coming up yet, but what I noticed was wrong with that was normally the 2B journey design is a collaborative adventure with teammates and stakeholders, though you are the facilitator and you're in control and you're in charge here. But this is normally a team adventure because this is the strategic vision for the CX and or UX, the experience for a particular product or feature set. So we've got to be working with product and engineering and other people who are our partners. This isn't just UX going into a corner. This is one of the rare times where whether you want to call it a meeting or a workshop, we do all have to get together and work on this. So I thought that it was not right to have the 2B journey design, which normally maps out what we talk about optimized task flows on the show. Here they are. We talk about doing your task analysis and your optimized task flows. The optimized task flows help us know what to design. The 2B journey tells us what to design. So I think it's a mistake to try to compress this project by having people designing while we're still deciding the optimized, desired, to-be, future state of the end-to-end customer journey. So these are things I see a lot that happen at agencies, consultancies, companies, government, is people think that they have to fit projects into the smallest time possible. They double things up that really shouldn't be doubled up. And I want to make sure that you are staying away from mistakes like these. If you have any questions as I go, please ask them. This is a conversation. I think LinkedIn is about a minute behind, and I think YouTube is maybe 30 seconds behind. So we're almost synchronous, and I'm happy to take your questions. So now I'd like to talk a little bit more about how I tend to build project plans. Now, I build all of my project plans in Monday.com, but I have to say very clearly here that Monday.com is not a sponsor. I pay them. They don't pay me. I do not benefit from talking about them, and ultimately we should be tool agnostic. If you have another project planning or project management system that you like, absolutely use it. What I'm doing is not only for Monday.com, it's just my preferred tool. I am using the pro version for reference, so this is a paid version, but you can certainly do the free trial if you're curious about Monday. So what Monday does, let's open up this for a moment. What Monday does is they allow you to make boards, and the board can be anything you want, and the board can have multiple views. So it starts out as a sort of table, almost like a spreadsheet or an Airtable type of thing, but then it will automatically make different views of the same data. It's one of the things I really love about it. So instead of going with these default project management boards, I made my own. You can make completely customized things here. Wilson says, are the employee interviews for more context for the PSE? In this particular thing, the employee interviews are probably because in service design and service blueprinting, you do have to talk to, so Wilson, you could be right. We don't know here. You could be talking to the stakeholders because you want their opinion on some aspect of the customer experience as kind of secondary research because they're not the customer, but they're in touch with the customer, or it could be stakeholders that are involved in the processes and systems at your company that are touch points for the customer, and you have to learn more about what's happening behind that curtain. So it could be either. So really quickly, no matter what tool you want to use for project management, I'm going to show you how I build my boards in Monday, and Monday has a little bit of a learning curve, but I found it not too bad, especially if you're familiar with Excel and Excel formulas. It's going to help you a little bit here. So here is a typical project template that I use. You may recognize some of the faces that I've put here for the staff, but this is, technically nobody in particular. This is a template that I will use, and I will customize this based on the projects that I'm scoping. Now, note at Delta CX, we're very often scoping strategy, research, information architecture, interaction design, that kind of stuff. So my default template has a lot of that already built in, but I'm ready to change this if that's not what this project requires, because ultimately one of my number one pieces of advice for you is only propose what the project requires. If you don't need an empathy map, because an empathy map isn't going to change anything and it's not going to help anybody and it's not going to inform a later stage of the task, don't do an empathy map. It's going to save you time, it's going to save your client money, or it's going to make you look more efficient at work. There's no reason to propose tasks or artifacts just to have stuff and things. So I'm all for efficiency, but you all know I'm for a proper user-centered design process. So I will typically propose the full project that I would like to do before a client says, oh, that's more than our budget, or oh, that would take too long. I'm going to start with the blue sky version. You're telling me these are the outcomes that you want, or you're telling me these are some of the pain points that are happening in your organization or for your customers. This is how I would approach that. And then if I have to negotiate, I negotiate from there. But that's where I go. Now, one of the key things I want to point out about my project is if you look at each of my tasks, you'll notice that I've got very granular tasks in here because I don't want to miss a thing. I've got the voice of the customer. So this is, do you have any existing data that I can look at? Do you have customer support tickets? Do you have surveys that you've run, or NPS? Do you have, or can we research things people are writing out on the interwebs, tweets about you, app ratings, ratings left on other websites? What can we learn about what people are saying? Though, of course, this is not necessarily in a primary way. We haven't asked the user what they think. We are learning some of the things that the users are experiencing or expressing through secondary ways. Wilson says, sorry, what is this tool and is it free? This is monday.com, and we can go to monday.com. I think there is a free trial, And oh no, it thinks I'm logged in. So you'll have to go to monday.com and check it out. I am using a paid version. So what I'm doing goes beyond what the free version can do if there is one. Yeah, it doesn't say monday.com anywhere. You do see it up in my up here in my URL. So okay, so then metrics, baseline, and success criteria. I'm estimating 2 hours for this because let's just have a meeting and talk about how do we know that this project is a success? What will we need to see? Are we already collecting any metrics or baseline metrics that will help us see kind of where we're starting from? These are our conversion rates. These are our times on task. These are this is how many people tend to sign up from trial to paid. This is how many average number of licenses people buy in a year. Whatever this is, whether it's B2B or B2C or something else, there's probably some way to measure it that isn't junk vanity crap numbers. Some of it is going to be sales and marketing, and some of it might be related to the user experience. But either way, there's got to be ways to measure. How will we know later on that this project met business goals, met customer goals in measurable ways? Now, that's a whole separate talk on metrics and ROI and stuff. That's not for today, but it is a meeting that I like to have with clients so that we know how we're going to measure this and what they perceive as a success. That's time I've got to bill for. This isn't free. Remember, we're looking at the time that we're going to spend. Now, in some cases, I'm auditing the current site because we're very often coming in as a consultant. So that's something that we're going to do. And then you'll see I've got everything granularly: research planning, recruiting and scheduling, holding the sessions, time for analysis and synthesis, making personas, which sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, task analysis and optimized task flow. Usually we do that, sometimes we don't. Writing a research report. Some clients don't want that. Sometimes they just want a fun PowerPoint presentation that hits the high notes. Some clients do want our very detailed reports. Some clients want an Excel or Google spreadsheet of all of the pain points we found and what we feel their priorities are. So again, I just have to switch this around and say, okay, they didn't want a presentation, but they do want a spreadsheet. So now I need to update that. So ultimately, you are just putting in the way that I do this is you put in each of your tasks here. Next, I have a column of who's responsible for this task. Now, I use that because more and more in these plans, I'm starting to put in points where I need the client to make a decision. Especially if you've ever done consulting or whatever, but even you corporate workers as well, sometimes you are waiting for somebody else to get you materials, information, decisions. If it's voice of the customer, I might be waiting for a customer support team to get me last month's pool of common tickets. You absolutely can put into your project management system that this is a potential blocker. Yes, I'm going to do voice of the customer and we're going to spend 10 hours on it, but we are blocked if we don't get the stuff in time. So you could put a line in here. You could assign it to your client. That's how I use this column. And you could create a dependency, which I'll talk about in a moment, saying, I cannot do voice of the customer if I don't get the stuff from all y'all. And that's part of what dependencies tell us. They tell us, I can't do this thing until I do this other thing. And that's why everything in my project has a dependency, because to me, everything is a step-by-step process. Even something that's a little bit cyclical, I'll just write it out multiple times. Like down here, we have design round 1, testing planning round 1, testing recruiting round 1, testing setup and pilot for round 1, testing round 1, testing analysis round 1, and design round 2. If I'm going to suggest another round of testing, I end up copying and pasting those and I run them again. So I don't imply that something is a cycle. I map it all out. And this one's missing a date, but I would fix all the dates once I had a real project. This is just my template. So dependency is really important to say, I can't do this thing until this other thing is done. Or until I have received this information from you, or until so-and-so has made a decision or given something approval. More and more, I'm going to be putting those into my plans because they help our clients or stakeholders or teammates know if you don't get me the stuff that I need in time, and please give them a reasonable amount of time, you're going to delay me, you're going to throw off the project, and everybody's going to know it was you. And that's what the slippage column is about. So this one says slippage. And the idea is that you can write a positive or negative number of days here. And that basically says, based on my original estimate of how many days this would take, were we early or were we late? Now, if I wanted to, I could add another column and say whose fault was the slippage. But, that's up to you for how, deep into this you want to go. That could be helpful. It could seem accusatory, up to you. We've got assigned. Now notice there are some of my columns that have green lines and green words, like this estimated hours over here. That means that Monday is pulling this information from somewhere else. So let me skip those columns for now, and let me just, and then I'll get to that next. Next, we have the timeline. This is over what period of calendar days do we believe this task needs to be done? So we saw that on these flight plans before, where it was like, hey, week 1, week 2, these would be 2-week blocks or 3-week blocks. Here in our timeline is where we say, this is going to happen from Thursday, October 28th through Friday, November 5th. I think I need 7 business days to get this done. And you might say, Deb, how did you know that? We'll get there later. So that's where you put the calendar time where this will happen. Don't forget to account for any time off you or your team are taking, and don't forget to account for any holidays that are either national holidays, regional, or just holidays people are taking off. Okay. Status is being pulled from somewhere else. I'll show you that in a moment. This is what Monday calls a mirror column or a connected column, because the data comes from somewhere else. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a power user. Dependency we talked about. Here's where I type in, these are typing number fields. How many hours am I estimating for leads and assistants? Now, in my world, I just tend to price for 2 levels of people. My leads, which is like me and Larry, and, hypothetically, if someone like Darren or Nick or Michelle worked with me, they would definitely be leads. And then my assistants are all of the mid-level, junior, assistant, apprentice people. And the reason why I break out their time separately is because they're paid a different rate, and I bill the company a different rate. Now, again, where you work, that might not make sense, but you could also use those columns for individual people. Here's what Itan is going to do. Here's what Wilson's going to do. Here's what Debbie's going to do. You could hypothetically put people's names on it and do it that way if you wanted. If you're internal, then you're not as worried about billable time, but you're definitely worried about making sure you've assigned the right time to the right people for the job. But I'll show you why I don't put people's names here. I have a secret place where I put the people's names, so you could do it that way too. Out here, I'm just running lots of math. Monday has formula columns where I can say multiply this by this, add this to this, show me some numbers. Yes, you're officially working with Wilson, Itan. So these are just all fake numbers, and I'm pretending that I'm paid $10 an hour here. So these are all just fake numbers, and we're pretending here that we have expenses because we're going to give people some incentives for doing our research, and then I'll see if I'm making a profit. Again, if it's an internal project, you are less worried about the money and the profit. This is great for freelancers, contractors, agencies. If you're internal, you're probably more worried about time than what each person is paid. You're not going to do that. And you can see from these little crossed out eyeballs that means that in my world here on the Monday board, if I invite other people to the Monday board, I can keep them from seeing these columns. I can make these columns only visible and editable by me. And that way, if I am showing what I'm paying some of the people on the Delta CX team, other people don't see it because that can get awkward. Actually, at Delta CX, we tend to be very open about what we're paid, and I do believe in salary transparency. But again, depending upon where you are, you may or may not want to show that. Any questions so far, please ask, because now I'm going to show you how do I decide how many hours I'm doing and how many, say, Ralitza is doing or Larry or anybody else. This lives in sub-items. So, for example, for the audit of the current site, how long do I think we're each going to spend on that? Now, I would also have to fill in the timeline, which for now I'm leaving blank because this is my template. I'll fill that in later. Status, of course, would be once this project is approved, how's it going? You know, did we do it? Are we in the middle of it? Is it on hold? Is something blocking it? Or is there some other risk? And I have who's a lead and who's an assistant. And again, that's for me to calculate what people are paid. Wilson says, wow, it shows the time zone of your teammates. This tool is really good. Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. Ralitza's in Netherlands, though not in Amsterdam. And I think it has me as Berlin because it's just, the time zone where Rome is. So I don't think I don't think it thinks I'm in Berlin, but it goes by time zone. Aitan says, time and budget is my biggest issue. When I was looking for a job, they always want this for fake projects. I don't know how to determine it. Yep, I'll talk about that in a moment. So here I'm estimating hours, and you might go, Deb, where did you get these hours estimates from? I promise we're getting there. That's going to be on this spreadsheet up here. Time tracking is you can actually track your time in Monday. You can press this button and it'll start a timer, or I can click in the space and I can add manually time. So what starts out for me as a project scope or plan or proposal, if accepted by the client or when accepted by the client, now becomes the project plan. And now I'm doing my project management in here. And if we can track our time here, then I can also visualize how were my estimates? Where are we using too much time? Where do we have a little extra time? This column is a formula that takes the time tracking column and just turns it into a clean looking number. And then the remaining is a formula column that says subtract estimated from logged. And then these estimated payable and actual payable are formula columns. So again, if you're ever used to making formulas in Excel, Monday's pretty similar. And basically this looks back at this role thing and it says, if the role is lead, it's $10 an hour. If the role otherwise, it's $10 an hour. So let's pretend, just in a dreamy world, that I get $100 an hour, or leads at my company get $100 an hour, and assistants get $60 an hour. Now that I've set that formula, it's set it for the whole board, not just this box. All of your formulas are by column in Monday. So Wilson says, when you estimate changes, you adjust it here. Yes, you adjust it here. So if I say here that it's 160, it's also here, and it's everywhere for this column. You cannot have a different formula for different columns. It's not completely like Excel. It's basically by the column. So now that I'm pretending that leads are getting 100 and the assistants are getting 60, this is what it looks like I would be paying my staff for this. The actual, of course, then would multiply. Let's put these numbers in. Let's say it's 160. So as people logged time, it would start saying, hey, here's what you really owe these people. So again, this helps me as a project manager or agency manager or team person. Krishna says, awesome tool, quite helpful. John says, it's the first I've seen of Monday. We'll have to check it out. I've had good luck with Harvest in the past. I used to use Harvest many years ago, John. I hear you. Now I'm completely in love with Monday. And again, hashtag not sponsored. I hope that hasn't been on the screen this whole time. That would be, if I leave something up, let me know. So now these sub items can be rolled up to the items or tasks above them. That's what I'm doing with these mirror columns. Now, you can mirror a column from a totally other Monday board that you have. So it becomes a big relational database if you want. But I'm just rolling stuff up from sub-items into items. And so what it shows here is it shows me and Ralica as assigned because there's both of us here in the sub-items. And also, if you're wondering, why did each of us get our own sub-item? That's because we might be doing a different number of hours on different dates and tracking our time separately. So this is the way I've chosen to do it. Now, there are some limitations in Monday with this. As of when I'm recording this, which is October 2021, there's a lot about sub-items that's still in beta. So there's some things I've tried to do with sub-items and I couldn't do it because I am too powerful a user. Smitha says, I'm playing it in 2x to catch up. So what am I rolling up? I'm rolling up assigned so that it takes everybody's little pictures and rolls that up. So all the people chosen from the sub-items will be here. I'm rolling up the status. So again, let's open up a big one with lots of people, even a Larry picture. So I'm rolling up the status. So as people change the status, it will show the status colors here. And if I'm done, but Ralica's still working, it'll show a green and a yellow and whatever Larry said. So you get kind of a color visualization of that. I'm rolling up estimated hours. So all of these estimated hours here, 15.33, it's going to roll that up over here to estimated 21. And how I use that is I make sure that this 21 matches this 21 because I hand typed this 6 and I hand typed this 15, and I want to make sure that the math the board did for me matches what I manually typed in. Hi, Alyssa. No expenses here, no time tracked, but if there were, it would roll up here. This would be a total time tracking for all the people involved. And again, it would turn it into logged hours for a pretty number. And then the estimated payable and the actual payable also being rolled up. So here you can see, I imagine I'm paying people 900 plus 300 plus 300. That rolls up over here to 1,500. And then again, it's calculating how much money would I make on this because of course my staff are marked up, though not as much as you would think. Wilson says, do you still use Excel or Sheets for tracking management along with Monday or only this? I'm only using this. So let's talk. So this is a little bit about this. Before I talk to you about other things you can do in Monday, let's talk a little bit about where I got these hours. Now, Ralica and I reverse engineered some of the work we've done in the last year, and we came up with this sheet. And I think you can get it at a short link that I made, deltacx.link/estimation-sheet. Here it is. You can go to deltacx.link/estimation-sheet and you can get your very own copy of this sheet. Do a save as, because you can't type over mine. I think it'll show up as view only for you. So grab your own. And what this imagines, and again, it's got leads and it's got assistants. Again, if you are a team of one, then just put 100% all the way down for your leads. And if you have multiple people on your team, then just split this up. One lead, and then this asks you how many assistants do you have. So if you have a team of 3, this is probably going to be 2s. I tend to work with a team of me and 1 assistant, like me and Ralica. Sometimes it's me and Larry and Ralica, but it's mostly me and assistants. So that's the way it is. These are factors that we made up. We just reverse engineered a bunch of our projects where we tracked our time and we said, how long did these things take us? Okay, can we come up with some sort of multiplication factor that will help us estimate time in the future? And these factors connect to these numbers up here. So let's talk about these numbers up here. These start with this is research. So this sheet is research only. I'm still working on building non-research work like design and testing. For now, this is really just research. So let's say that for some reason we want to meet 30 people. We're going to meet them for an hour each, and we notice that our stuff maybe runs over a little bit. We're going to have an hour 15 minutes of video for each. So this is 1.25 for 1 hour, 15 minutes. Now we've got two chances for you to pad your estimate. I believe this is important both in your corporate job and in agency freelancer work. You've got to pad your estimates because things always run long. I like to call it predictable unforeseeables. You know something's going to go wrong. You don't know what it is, but it will. So first of all, rounding up hours is going to give you a little bit of padding. You can round up to 3. You can round up to 4 for a half day. Whatever you want, you can see the numbers changing as I go. Again, up to you. Play with it a little bit and see what works for you. Now, how many hours of work can people get done in a day? I tend to only put 4 or 5 here because if you've ever done research work, and especially the interviews and the analysis, you know that after 4 or 5 hours in a day, you are just shot. You are done. You cannot do 8 or more hours of this. You just can't. But let's pretend that we can do 5. Okay, so now we've got all the math doing the crunching. This is the percentage of these things I think I'm going to do. This is the percentage of things I think my assistant or coworker or whatever is going to do. This one doesn't care about seniority. This just cares about how many people are working on this. Then it's going to do some math. How many hours of work? So work hours, not work days, not hours including lunch and breaks. This is work hours. How many work hours does the system think you're going to need, taking all of these things into account? And how many hours does it look like your assistant is doing? Now, obviously, these two numbers should jump out at you right away. 172 hours is more than 1 month of work. It's very unlikely that your workplace is going to allow you to do a month of analysis work. So if we were to have one assistant on that, it's going to take that person 35 work days. Remember, there's 5 work days in a week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That means this would be 7 weeks of work for this person. We can improve that. We can shorten that by staffing up. So we can say we have 2 people who are working on that. Ralitza and Kayleen are going to work together. And now it's 18 work days because we have 2 people on it. 18 work days is still 3.5 weeks of work. So, if you're dealing in agile sprints and they're 2-week sprints, that's probably 2 2-week sprints just to analyze your research. And then you have to take a look at, does this get much better if I can find somebody else to help us? Yeah, it gets a little better. Now, 12 days, that's 2.5 weeks. Okay, we cut a few days off of that. But again, eventually there's going to be critical mass. There's going to be a point in time at which you're trying to put so many researchers on something, assuming you have these researchers, that it's going to be really hard for them to coordinate. Too many brains all trying to get into a Miro board and do all these things. So I think you're probably not going to do more than 3. And remember, this is me plus 3. So now this is 4 people trying to analyze this. So again, you have to just take a serious look at this. This would be me plus 2 people. This would be me plus 1 person. Wilson says, when it's 10% for lead, are they just looking over the assistant's work? Great question. Yes. In general, when I've put myself in at a lower number, like a 10 or 15%, I think of myself more as a coach and a little bit of a collaborator rather than I am really getting in and doing this work. Now, that's another thing that we could change here. We could say, you know what? She just has too much work. Why am I not helping her out more? What if I do half the work and we get 2 assistants on this and it's me and 2 assistants, and all of a sudden, maybe let's break this up. Let's imagine there's 3 people. So now it's 64 hours for me, 64 hours for each of the assistants. Remember, this is all the assistants together. And now our system is saying that this can be done in less than 3 weeks. So you just have to adjust these numbers based on how you work. And again, these are all 100s if you work alone. All of these numbers here will be 100s if you work alone. But right now, these are the numbers that we are mostly putting back into our Monday board. Monday doesn't have a good way to calculate this right now, because since a column has all the same calculations, I can't have one calculation for recruiting and one calculation for thing. It would probably be a little messy. Alyssa says, Debbie, one of my favorite books is The Mythical Man Month. Question, at what point do you find that more staff actually reduces efficiencies, especially in research due to increased communication costs, etc.? Thank you for asking. I have never worked with more than 2 assistants at the same time on something. I feel like that's kind of a really good number, especially if they're heavily collaborating and maybe I'm a little bit more of a coach. But I would probably say, and then sometimes we have Larry just kind of helicoptering over us and being a little bit of a coach. So I would say, probably no more than 2 people, maybe 3 doing the heavy work, but I probably wouldn't put more than 3 people on it, because that's a lot, as you said, of communication, coordination, coding, tagging, synchronization, getting into the Miro board with everything that people have. So that's just my opinion. But if someone has found a great way to do something with 6 researchers or whatever, knock yourself out. But usually it's me and an assistant. And I had put 2 in here because with 172 hours, we'd probably need a second assistant to help that analysis take less than 2 months. Sirocco, hello. Good morning. Okay, any questions on this sheet? And then also there's a couple of numbers down here on how many people to invite or schedule, but that's not hours, that's humans. So this is where I get some of my estimate numbers from, but ultimately your number of hours should be based on how you work. That's why eventually you will want to always, always, always log your time. Even if you're at a job where you're not billing by the hour, you still want to log your time so you can start to understand, how long does it take me to do things? And then you can try to reverse engineer that into this sheet and say, yeah, you know what? When it's interview only, it's taking me 3 hours for every hour of video. Or you know what? When it's interview only, it's 2 hours for every hour of video. Whatever is like your factor here, you can change that for yourself and reverse engineer this sheet to make sense for how you work. And then you'll have an easy thing that you can put in and, go with your best guess. Sorry, my dog is doing mini woofing. Olivia, what are we woofing at? Okay, let's talk about how Monday can let us slice and dice this information into other views. So typically I will send this to the client, but they get the shared air quotes version. And the shared version looks like this. Woof. So you can see that the shared version, first of all, has no sub-items. So they don't see like what's Deb doing and what's Ralitza doing, because let's face it, they might not care. If you care, then this view is not going to cut it for you. You would just have to invite people to the board. This is sharing the board. This is not inviting people to collaborate on the board. 2 different things in Monday. But this one is nice and it's view only and it's got numbers, but it doesn't have any of the rolled up columns and it doesn't have the sub items. So it's a nice thing for me to show to my client as part of my proposal and scope of work. But of course, that's optional. You also do have the option to invite other people to be part of the board, whether you are inviting people who are going to be your collaborators or you're inviting people who are outside of the project and want to have eyeballs on the project, like a client or a stakeholder or a project manager wants to see how UX is managing themselves. You can invite people to the board. They will see this version. But again, you have the opportunity to decide if there are certain fields you don't want them to see. So for example, who can view this column? Only me. I've got the crown because I'm a workspace administrator. If I wanted Ralitza to see it, I would be able to add her, but she's technically not on this board. So I would have to invite her to the board as a member or collaborator, etc. So let's talk about these other views. Some great views that Monday does is Gantt Chart. I love Gantt chart. And you can, the Gantt chart basically takes timelines, tasks, and dependencies and maps them out. So the arrows show dependencies. The arrows imply you can't do this thing until you've done this thing. Here you can see we have something that had multiple dependencies. Conducting the research sessions meant we couldn't do these other things. So you can have multiple dependencies here. So the Gantt chart is a really good view of the project. This is a standard thing. It's in lots of project management software. It's called Gantt, G-A-N-T-T. And basically, it's just a way to visualize a project as well as dependencies and things like that. And I can also make some changes here. It looks like this is out of time and it doesn't have a dependency with the thing before it. We have to do recruiting and scheduling before we run the testing. So this is a mistake. I can easily drag this here. And because of the dependencies, Monday now understands, oh, wait a minute, if this thing got moved in time, the other things will have to get moved in time. And so we should see these things moving, and I'm not too sure why they're not moving. Here they go. Usually there's a little bit of a weird delay. I think it checks the whole board and checks for what's dependent on what. So it will eventually push those things out and reflow your project, which again, if there are dependencies, you would want. And I need a dependency between here and here. This is a mistake. So I need testing to rely on recruiting. I can't do testing without recruiting. So I can just come over here to this, and it says, it says it's dependent on setup and pilot. Well, that should be good. Where's setup and pilot? Setup and pilot is somehow not on the map. This looks like a mistake. So I would have to figure out why setup and pilot didn't make it to the map. Oh, here it is. Oh, because I forgot to put dates on it. If you don't put dates on something, the Gantt chart doesn't know where to put it. So that's why I do have a correct a correct dependency. I forgot to put dates on it. So you would want to fix that. I won't go through it right now, but that's usually I do look at my Gantt chart because my Gantt chart will help me recognize mistakes. It's easy to see when things aren't going in a linear fashion and depending on each other and blocking each other. This one is obviously out of time. This one's a little bit weird. We wouldn't do the presentation to the client before the presentation preparation. So I can drag that over here. So it's draggable, or I can click on it and I can change the dates by hand, however you like to do it. So that's the Gantt chart. Love those. I might also send those to the client. So there's a share link for that too. I do run financials on my boards because, again, in many cases, I'm paying myself, I'm paying other people, and I'm wondering, am I making money? Am I losing money? How is my estimated payable to my workers? How did that turn out versus what I actually paid these people? Am I estimating so badly that I'm going over budget and overpaying? So you can build different charts on what you need to see. And again, all of it comes back to the information in the main table. We also have the timeline view. It's kind of like the Gantt chart, but it's way more compressed. It almost looks a little bit like those flight plans we looked at earlier today. So this is just like a super high level view, and you can zoom in on it if you want. This is a month view. We can zoom in and get a little bit more of a week view, or we can ask it for a week view. And now we can see week to week, what do we plan to work on? These open spaces, of course, are the weekend because this is a Monday to Friday. This is a Monday to Friday. I didn't book this over a week. Here, this one is more than a week, so it looks like I'm working through the weekend, though, of course, I don't plan to. So this is the timeline view. I think it's really nice. It's kind of like a summarized Gantt chart without the dependencies, and sometimes that's just easier for clients to make sense of. I've also got a fun time usage chart. This just takes a look at all of the tasks that I've put into the system. Now, it puts them in alphabetically. For some reason, I don't seem to have an option to just put them in the order they're in the board. It's so strange. I do not have that option. I can either do it by X or Y axis. So Either way, so these are not chronological, and that's a little bit weird, but I'm not going to get my knickers in a twist over it. Basically, this takes a look at the blue line is how many hours did I estimate for any particular task, and the yellow is going to roll up how many hours did the team log. And this will give me a pretty good, pretty fast visualization of where are we under hours, so we've got some padding, or we're not done yet, or whatever. Where are we getting close to hours? Where are we over hours? Because that's going to cut into my profit, because I still pay my team, but I don't always bill the client if the client has ended up agreeing on a flat price based on the total project price, which I sometimes do. I do, this is your total price. If you don't change your scope, we promise it won't be more than that. That, of course, is for people who estimate confidently. And also workload. So I built a couple of boards here, a couple of mini dashboards, and there's nothing here yet because there were no timelines in the sub-items. If there were timelines in sub-items, what this would show is it would show all the people, and it would show how many hours per week I've assigned them work. That way you don't accidentally assign someone more than 30, 35, whatever hours, because remember, if I think you're only doing 5 hours of work a day, you have a 30-hour week. So you don't want to work more than 30 in that sense. Yes, of course, your client or project might pay you for full day. Some people bill by the day. Totally up to you. Smitha says, yeah, ordering by alphabet doesn't make sense. I know, I can't change that. And then this, of course, takes a look more at hours by person if I needed to map that out. There are other views that you can add, but these are the views that I've decided to add for my project so that I can manage it. And again, the main thing I'll say about project management is that once this is approved by the client, now we're using this for reals. So let's open up a for reals. This one is for reals. And basically, let's zoom in a little bit so you don't see some of the dollar signs on these. But this was the project we did earlier this year. And you can see I used this as my template later on, but this is how it started out. And I've kind of upgraded it a little bit. But let's say, for example, research synthesis. So this is where I thought Ralisa was going to have 85 hours because we hadn't built our spreadsheet yet. And she spent 119. Now, of course, here it says she's got negative 34 hours left. And it's going to reflect also if I did a visualization of time used. Obviously, her time used would be way above my time estimated, and that would signal a project management problem. Here, it looked like she was going to go over, and she asked me for permission to go over, and I said yes. So in this sense, I knew I had enough budget to pay her for 34 more hours, and it wouldn't mess things up too badly. That's my choice to make. You know, if you don't have that time for somebody, then you got to get in and do it yourself and probably not bill for it. So, you know, that's the other option. Here we gave Larry some hours and he didn't use them. So, you know, that's hours that we can put back somewhere else. So when we're doing a real project, this is now also my project management tool where I'm looking for the status of things and how things are going, and are we utilizing our time? Are we underutilizing it? Are we overutilizing it? How did I do on the budget? You know, so since this doesn't show you, this is estimated versus actual budget, but obviously this one's time. I should change the name of that. So this is that funny alphabetical thing, but you can see where we estimated incorrectly. Anywhere the log time is kind of above the total hours, that's going to be bad. And let's turn off cumulative. Now this is much more obvious. Anywhere that yellow is above blue, the estimation was off. Anywhere blue is above yellow, the estimation was quite good and padded and had some room. And, you know, you can try to buy that back if you need to buy some hours from somewhere. So you can see we learned a lot here about some incorrect estimations that led us to create the spreadsheet that you just saw. And that's why this is such a helpful tool for not just the planning of the project, but then the managing of the project. One more thing that I'd like to show you. Let's go back to the template. Template. is that Monday also has automations. So for example, when a new item is created, set responsible to Delta CX. That just keeps me from having to click something twice, but it's nice. Adjust the timeline of an item to reflect changes made in the date of the dependent item. That's where you saw when I changed something in the Gantt chart, everything reflowed itself because the system said, oh wait, this is dependent on this and this just moved, move this guy too, move this guy too. So the automation does that. But then take a look at this. This one says, when a sub-item status changes to anything, notify me. And excuse me, that way, as people come in and do work and they change the status, I get a notification as the project manager. So I know when say Ralitza has started work because maybe she changed something to in progress. I know when she's done, she changes it to done. I know when something has been paused, hopefully for a good reason, because on hold would be a better reason than blocked. If she marks it blocked or at risk, I'm also going to get that notification. So as a project manager, I get an in-the-moment notification when somebody working on my team makes a change to the status. So you can create all of these automations, which are kind of like if this, then that, or Zapier type of things, where you can say, if you see this, do this, or if something happens, do this. There's another thing that you can do that I don't have on this board, but you can create a column with a date, and you can say, when this date comes, send me a notification at 9 a.m. to remind me of this thing. So, there might be, I could say maybe send me a notification the day before the end of the timeline to remind me that this due date is coming up. So there's a lot of things you can do with automations in Monday so that you can have more control over the project, more reminders, more proactive things that are happening. But this is typically how I'm managing it. And typically as a project goes, I'm watching the hours people are spending. I'm making sure that we're making the progress that I'm expecting. And I'm making sure that everything is not being blocked, like we're not missing stuff from the client. But you can see in a case like this, we might only be waiting for the voice of the customer stuff. But again, if you have points where the client has to make a decision, I would probably add that to the board, because sometimes you ask a client to make a decision and they get back to you 2 weeks later. And then they're like, why weren't you working on that? And we have to say, we can't do anything until you make that decision. That's another great time for you to have a column with a reminder. It could say, you can do like, if this date arrives and the status isn't done, contact these people. So you can build all these neat little automations. So I would say, as part of your project management, you might want to put things in here that other people are responsible for. I need this from engineering. I need this from the product team. I need this from marketing. I need this from customer support. Put that in there. Whether or not they're invited to your board, put that in there for yourself and your own project management. Share it with key stakeholders or another project manager, a more dedicated team project manager, and let them know that these are things that could block you and slow this project down, throw off the timing, create risk. So any questions about this? My goal today was to talk about scoping, proposing, planning, and then managing that. I just happen to use Monday.com for all of it. As you can see, Monday.com does a lot of stuff. There is a bit of a learning curve here. If I can help, let me know. But, and again, it is not sponsored. I pay Monday.com. They do not pay me. But I've been very excited about this tool. And my previous project management system I'd used for about 10 years, and I thought I was happy with it until I discovered this. And I left them almost immediately after 10 years, and they didn't even know what hit them. I'd been giving them 8s and 9s in NPS scores for years, and all of a sudden, it just wasn't a match. And I'm much happier with this. Also, for people who are curious, this little speech bubble here is a place for you to keep some notes. You can tag people in notes, but I don't put too many notes here because I find that between email and Slack and Monday, it's like, oh God, where were those notes? They're everywhere. So I try to not do that. I try to have, more organized stuff so that we don't just have notes all over the place. But yeah, any other questions before we wind up? Because we've gone just over an hour, and I wanted to wrap up and just remind everybody, please check the schedule. I have changed a lot of our show dates for the rest of the year. I am no longer working at that contract job, which I'm happy about, but I do have a 2-week vacation coming up in about a month, so there's a lot of stuff that's been moved around and changed, so please make sure you're looking at deltacx.link/events. It is a Google Calendar that you can add to your Google Calendar. Thank you, Sirocco. Anybody have any other questions about planning projects, proposing projects? I know we were going to try to get into some of your scenarios, like Iton's generative research and evaluative research, and Michelle's less than optimal, I can't get users research. But for me, that would just mean a lot more voice of the customer, a lot more talking to sales, and customer support, and the people who are closest to the people that I can't get. Iton says, are you still taking that behavioral economics course? Yes and no. I did sign up for it and I did start it, but I ran out of time in the last couple of weeks and I haven't been able to move forward with it. So I'm hoping next week, now that I'm not at that contract job, I'm hoping next week I'll have more time to dive back into it. But that one has been on hold. So far, I feel a bit meh about it. I feel like they haven't really said anything that I can go and use. It's been a little bit fluffy so far. So, and I did spend about 400 euros on it. So I'm hoping it's not fluffy. Any other thoughts or questions before we go? Otherwise, I will see everybody. No stream on Monday, but yes stream on Tuesday. I will do office hours at the usual time. I've got too many things popping up in my calendar. There we go. So no stream on Monday and office hours regular time on Tuesday. Wednesday will be a micro lesson with Larry Marine talking about knowledge design. And of course, Friday, reaction streams. Mira says, sorry, maybe you touched on that, but how's the time tracking working exactly? Do you record it yourself or the app extracts the data from somewhere? Super. Let's jump into that again real quickly. So the time tracking, I put it down here. Remember, you build a Monday board to be and do whatever you want. I put time tracking into the sub items. You could put it up here in the main items. Totally up to you. You can either press this blue thing and it will start a timer, or you can press in the white space and it will let you add time track sessions yourself. So if you track your time by just writing notes, or if you use another tracking tool, like some people do, you can then come in here and add it manually, or you can run the timer. And then I have the log time just turning that into, like if it's a weird number of time, the log time will turn it into a nice hours and minutes kind of thing. So that's where time tracking lives. But hopefully that was helpful to peeps. And I guess we will wind down. I am doing kind of a sister stream to this one. I think it might be later in November or December. It's a micro lesson on freelancing and contracting and kind of having your own agency, and some questions I'm getting asked a lot about that lately. Here it is, Monday, November 22. Okay, so it's a month from now. I'm going to be doing a micro lesson on freelancing, contracting, having your own agency, and some of the frequently asked questions I get about that. Alyssa says, thank you. Great presentation. Well, thank you. It was totally off the cuff. No presentation required, but I'm usually live 4 times a week. I would love to see everybody joining us on the YouTube. And let's just flip back to a giant picture of me. Hello. So please remember to subscribe on YouTube and ring that bell so you know when I'm live. After the stream, please leave some likes and comments. It helps in the algorithm. If you've enjoyed the show, please recommend the Delta CX YouTube channel to your UX and CX buddies, because we have over 400 hours of content on the channel. So if you're curious about a topic, please go to YouTube and type in Delta CX and your topic. Chances are we've said something about it. And we do have a Slack workspace, completely free. It is not membership based. You can join at deltacx.link/join Slack and join our community of low ego action heroes. So with that, I say have a great weekend to everybody. I'm so happy to see everybody again and to get some of these things back on the calendar and be doing more shows. But again, between some courses that I'm taking in the coming weeks and a vacation I have, a lot of our shows had to be canceled and moved around. So please do check the Google Calendar. And good luck with your projects. And thanks again. Be safe, and I'll see you all very soon. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are